fuck? Oh, there's so many goddamn.
Welcome into the double FU, the FU times 2. I am Jeremy Shulman at FF_Rebel. There are so many goddamn Jesse Muller at JMuller05. Welcome in. We need to talk about the Brandon Aiyuk request for a trade, instant reaction, talk all about what's going down. We got a few tweets to mull through. We'll go through kind of the specifics of what's been happening, how it got to this point, and of course, the super fun stuff of what could possibly happen if Brandon Aiyuk gets traded. But we got to go through all that stuff first. And to do it, we got Jesse. Jesse, how are you today? How's Brandon Aiyuk today? What the hell's going on here?
I'm feeling like the San Francisco 49ers. I'm like, what's happening again? We're getting another trade request because, as if we remember this not too long ago, Aiyuk officially requested a trade. So I think he's really trying to force their hand because they don't want to pay him market value, which whole nother thing, right? Because Brandon Aiyuk is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and 49ers are like, you know what? Let's pay everyone else except you. So I don't understand what's going on with the 49ers. It's baffling. But yeah, it's fun stuff for us to talk about because it's like peak off-season and shit going on. So yeah, let's hop on board and do this. What do you say?
Let's do it. Let's get right into it, and let's first talk about what we know is going on. This is from Mike Garofalo, but of course Ian Rappaport and all the major outlets are reporting that Aiyuk has officially requested a trade after unsuccessful attempts to reach an extension. Now, we know that, what was it, a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, the video dropped where Brandon Aiyuk was talking to Jaden Daniels, former teammate a couple of colleges ago for those guys, but former teammate in college, and just telling him that they don't want him anymore, referring to the 49ers. In those past couple of weeks, we've seen the situation kind of deteriorate, even though there wasn't much news about it aside from that. So now we have the official request. So let's first react to this. And Jesse, what are you thinking about this official request from Aiyuk? Does this matter? Is this for real, or is this just more negotiation ploys here on Aiyuk's side?
Yeah, I put out a tweet earlier today. I was like, oh, so now y'all like Ricky Pearsall, like jokingly, right? Because
Yeah.
this is the whole thing with Aiyuk, and if he goes, it's going to be good for Pearsall. But if it, like, for fantasy perspective, this is actually what we want for Aiyuk to go to wherever the magical place would be. I know we've heard taking of like it's Pittsburgh. Let's hope it's not Pittsburgh because that's like the one place you don't want him to go. But if he goes to the Jets or like a fun offense that has a quarterback that can support wide receivers, that's what we're hoping for Aiyuk. He can get to the place where he could theoretically hit 150 targets, and then that's how he becomes a top 5 and like a fantasy wide receiver. So like, yeah, fantasy wise, yeah, I want him out of San Francisco because he's very capped in San Francisco. Like he was a stud, and he had to do so much to put up 1,300 yards last year. I think he only had like 79 receptions or something. Like he was ridiculous on what he was doing, right? So it's great. Like the floor's high in San Francisco, but the ceiling's just not there. So that's the whole, like, we go back and forth. It's like, yeah, he's a stud. The situation's like kind of sort of. So yeah, I go back and forth with how I do this, but I've been like, I put out tweets. I've done the fancy pros, like, guys, I'm fading. It's Brandon Aiyuk because of San Francisco personally. So I don't know. Where do you kind of stand on this? And does this change your value for him at all? Or are you just kind of just waiting to be like, all right, if they trade him, sure, it'll change it. But in the meantime, kind of where do you stand with him?
Yeah, I'm wondering how it changes the value in the market. It doesn't change the value for me, but I think the market value is really what's interesting here. There's two sides to this coin, and we're going to get into both sides and the people who are, already posting arguments about this on Twitter one way or another. But one side of the argument is he lives within the San Francisco offense. He's a top 3 option in that offense, which can support multiple options, and he lives off of hyper efficiency, but he's been able to do it for multiple years now. So Brandon Aiyuk has just shown that his talent is dominant enough to live off that efficiency. And if you look at the other pieces in this offense, whether you're Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, all of those guys can live off of hyper efficiency. And we know if one of them goes down to injury, misses time, the other 3 are able to absolutely go off. We saw this last season. I think, was it Deebo and Aiyuk were both top 20 wide receivers in terms of their finish? Was that last year?
Yeah, last year. Yeah, they were both Neither one was a wide receiver one, but they were both close. They were like, I think they were almost back to back in points per game, if I remember correctly. But they were right next to each other, around 16 points per game. It's not too bad. It's not too bad, but
So that's the one side of the coin. The other side of the coin as well, he could go to a situation where he's a one. This was like the T. Higgins argument last month when they, finally decided to franchise him. The discussion right now is that T. Higgins isn't going to be signed long term. So we'll be having this discussion about T. Higgins again next year in terms of, where is he going to land? Will he land somewhere where he can be a one? I don't know that there's too many spots out there where Brandon Aiyuk could be a one, and I love it for fantasy. Like, he can be a one in New England. Okay. I love it for fantasy. He can be Jaden Daniels one. Terry McLaurin, that's interesting for fantasy, but Cliff Kingsbury, McLaurin is a pretty significant target magnet himself. If he goes to Denver, I just think Denver's an absolute mess. So there's a few spots where he could be a one, but then does that translate to equal, if not greater, fantasy production? And I think the answer is probably no.
Yeah, it's really hard because we want the quarterbacks that are capable of supporting these guys. With Aiyuk, if he went to a terrible situation such as like New England, even though I like the upside with Drake May, at the moment it's still like we don't know how good because how Drake May is. Same thing with Denver, rookie quarterback. You don't know how that's going to work out. Or he go to a place like Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson's on like the downward spiral of his career. He was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL last year as far as metrics and efficiency. Fantasy wise, he was fine, like he was okay, but NFL quarterback play, like he avoids the middle of the field. All these situations come up, so. I get it, but like the whole thing with Aiyuk, and I know like Matt Harmon specifically put out his reception perception charting of him, and no surprise, it's an all green route tree. Like Aiyuk can do everything. He's a really, really good wide receiver. So I don't mind investing on him wherever he goes. I just worry how the market's going to overreact to that. Like say he goes to the Cowboys or something, right? And he's there with CeeDee Lamb and they have one of the best two punches in the NFL. The problem is you have to pay him. Yeah, like that's what I'm talking about, right? He could run every route, and he's like better than he's just really good wide receiver. That's the whole thing. So it's kind of like we're waiting to see that kick into like what he is, because when we talk about Aiyuk, we don't talk about him as one of the best wide receivers in the NFL unless it's these true degenerates that are like in the dynasty circle. Like you just talk to a random person on the street, they'd be like, "Hey, do you think Brandon Aiyuk's top 5 wide receiver in the NFL?" You'd probably get some sideways licks your way, right? They'd be like, "What? Are you insane?" Like, no way. But yeah, he's just really good. So I don't know where he's going to end up. If he does get traded, we talked about these places ad nauseum, but can it happen? Sure, it's possible. It's just you think it would already happen, right, with the draft and all that fun stuff. So I guess I'll ask you this question: where do you think, if he does get traded, where do you think the best landing spot possible for Brandon Aiyuk is?
I can't give credit to this one because I just saw it as I was flipping through all these tweets, so I don't remember who said it. But a really interesting spot that I saw was the New York Jets. They have the capital. They're obviously in win now mode. Aaron Rodgers is capable still, I think, of supporting 2 options. They only have 1 option there in New York, with Garrett Wilson. They have the rushing game, but, we're looking at like the Tyler Conklins and Xavier Gibsons of the world, looking for this value in the Jets offense. They're missing a 1A or 1B, depending on, what it looks like when they get there. I'm not sure who's better, to be fair, between Garrett Wilson and Brandon Aiyuk, but that would be an absolute monster offense. They would be, I think, the immediate immediately in the top 2, if not top 3 for favorites to win the Super Bowl. The Vegas odds would go nuts if this happened. But I did read something that said that the Jets have the draft capital to get this done. And that's really interesting. I don't know if they can work it out with the cap long term. They can figure something out, but for a defensive, driven and minded team with Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson and Brandon Aiyuk with Breece Hall back there, man, that would be exciting. I think that's probably the most interesting spot for me.
Good luck stopping that defense. Y'all gonna be in trouble. Yeah, that'd be like 2 top 10-ish wide receivers in the NFL. Like I guess depends how good, like how in on Garrett Wilson you are. Yeah, that'd be nuts. I think theoretically a landing spot that we kind of like don't really talk about is the Chargers. I just don't know like if it makes sense for them to really trade for that guy now, considering they're kind of rebuilding, right? But if you put him as the theoretical number 1 player in that offense, like, no, I'm sorry, Lad McConkey, like you're just gonna crush your. It's gonna be the Brandon Aiyuk show. So
poor lad.
It'd be a lot of fun to see that with him, Justin Herbert, stud, right? So I I don't know if that's theoretically in the range of outcomes for him to go to the Chargers, but if we worst cast him in these spots, like send him to, send him to Carolina, not Carolina, send him to Arizona or send him to a place that really doesn't have anyone else besides Mark Harrison Jr. It's just another situation with a team that's rebuilding. So it's hard because you don't have these situations where these teams are win now, because that win now team is the San Francisco 49ers. So it's really perplexing to me why they would consider trading Aiyuk. That's the whole thing that doesn't make sense. You want to win and continue to win. If you trade Brandon Aiyuk, you're really hurting yourself this year and potentially in the future too. And the market really doesn't really want to pay these mega deals. The Tyreek Hill is such an outlier deal. Teams don't give that up. So it's, that's the whole thing we're asking. Possible?
Well,
I'm just excited to see.
The Patriots, this is Josina Anderson now. The Patriots were reported to have, again, expressed interest in the last couple of weeks in trading for Aiyuk. They were told he was not being traded again at this time. Maybe times have changed. But there's one school of thought that says that there's no way that the 49ers are going to get rid of Aiyuk. And just like you said, this is a win now window. Adam Levitan, bright fantasy mind here. Number one, they're firmly in their Super Bowl window, of course. Number two, they need Brandon Aiyuk or a similar player. You're not really going to trade Brandon Aiyuk probably for another offensive piece. That's not really going to work for a similar piece. And then, of course, the point here, I think, is number three, that Aiyuk has no leverage, right? It's going to cost him, an arm and a leg to hold out long-term, well into camp and beyond. And the fact is, this team can tag him. They can really press him monetarily. So he's doing all he can by vocally putting his stuff out there with his conversation with Jaden Daniels, his distaste and displeasure for the process. But if the 49ers hold firm here and don't, give in to his demands, Aiyuk has two options: hold out, not going to be good for him, or take less money than he thinks he's worth.
Yeah, the CBA is really slanted towards the teams in these perspective. We just saw Caleb Williams sign his rookie deal. It's $39 million total. Years ago, we had the Sam Bradfords of the world, these guys getting massive contracts with their top 5 position. You don't see that anymore. And then holding out on top of it just doesn't make sense for a player to hold out. It's such in the team's favor these days with how they shifted the CBA. So congrats to the owners on that one. You really pulled the wool over the players' eyes on that. They're at a disadvantage because you also get the tag situation too, right? So they could tag him another year, so they don't have to sign him. So it's the Dak Prescott situation in Dallas, where it's guess what? We don't have to sign you long term. We can tag you. Yeah, it'll cost us a lot of money for that 1 year, but you can still do that. So for Aiyuk, it's just a really kind of a crappy situation. I know he deserves to get paid and he wants to get paid, but it's up to the team to do that. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, San Francisco is choosing to drag this out, where it's only going to get more expensive for them to sign him long term, because we're still they got the CeeDee Lamb deal. You got T. Higgins, who's likely going to be a free agent. I don't think Cincinnati's going to sign him. So I just think the difference between him and a T. Higgins, he's a much better player than T. Higgins. So he should get that money, right? We've kind of seen it over there. But and for fantasy perspective, he's never had 120 targets in a season. That's the craziest thing with Aiyuk in the situation he's in, right? So that's what I mean, the ceiling's gapped for fantasy. So that's the hard part. Maybe, maybe take a step forward. Maybe somebody gets injured. Maybe CMC or Kittle or Debo goes down for a significant period of time. And then, maybe he can push to 140 targets, but I don't think it's going to happen someday.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And this is Andrew Brandt. So just to kind of, put a stamp on what we were talking about here. Brandon Aiyuk, I want to be traded. 49ers, that's cute. See you at camp. Point here being there's just zero leverage that he has, unfortunately. But let's talk a little bit about what Jesse was alluding to here. And I really like this tweet here from Warren Sharp. So I'll go ahead and see if I can, there it is. It's in full. So see if I can kind of read this. So Warren Sharp says, forget counting stats as it relates to determining Brandon Aiyuk's value. Since trading for McCaffrey, the 49ers throw the ball at the 32nd rate in the NFL and operate at one of the slowest paces in the NFL. He's not going to put up massive numbers in that environment yet. He ranked number 1 in the NFL in yards per target, number 1 in the NFL in percentage of first downs or TDs per target. He's an outstanding asset in San Francisco, but we'll never see his ceiling in this offense. So this is my question to you, Jesse, because I don't believe this. I know he's living off of hyper efficiency, But
Mhm.
unless there's a team out there who's willing to build around Brandon Ayuk and who can do it to an acceptably, like, at least mediocre level, and then not invite equally good pieces here, I don't think there's a space where, like, if he goes to the Jets, he's got to compete with the running game, a good defense, and Garrett Wilson, and then deal with a new quarterback. If he goes to the Chargers, like you said, he has to compete with a run first mentality. Potentially, Ladd McConkey's probably no competition. But
Mhm.
who's to say that they don't bring in another back in all offensive weapons next year to try and solidify that situation? So, I don't think there's many teams in the NFL who could or would build around Brandon Ayuk to the extent where we're going to see his ceiling. It feels to me that living in this hyper efficient offense is his best fantasy option. What do you think?
Yeah, for the floor for Brandon Aiyuk, I think so. But if he goes to say the Patriots, like he's gonna get more than 120 targets. Like that's just how it's gonna
Yeah,
work out, right?
sure.
Because there's like I like some of the rookies they have there, but like let's be real, there's no competition to him. So it becomes a situation where if you want the ceiling outcome, like you want him somewhere else. If he ever going to be a top five, because like you want him pushing 150 targets, like that just doesn't happen in San Francisco, and he's doing all he can. As case in point, by the stats you just listed out, he's doing everything year in year out to be as efficient as possible. But it's like he needs the other half of it to come around. He needs the quarterback or the situation capable of. It's like if it's a bad defense and they have to throw, like that would be good for Ayuk for fantasy. So it's one of those things needs to change. And like it sucks because you look at his stats right here, it's like, yeah, he's been incredible. And you see the stats, but like look at the targets, like they're just not there. So it's and he's doing really good like target share numbers too. It's not just like he's doing everything possible. And it's just sometimes this is the other part of fantasy that makes it difficult. Players can be incredible talents, and this is kind of gets into the Nico Collins and the Texans. The difference is like I think we all believe Houston is capable of throwing at a much higher rate and increasing that pass volume. Where like it's okay, we can see Nico getting 150 targets. Like they could do that. We saw that last year with CeeDee Lamb. Like everything kind of fell into place for him, where people are like, "Oh, he's not it." I was like, "I believe in CeeDee Lamb, but I'm telling him." With Ayuk in San Francisco, it's like they're not going to need to pass or throw a lot because they still have one of the best rosters in the NFL. The defense is incredible. Like they have this great offensive mind in Shanahan, so they can continue to kind of churn this out year over year. So I'm kind of with you. I think it's more he's a high floor play than it is a ceiling play. And like it's fine having these guys on your roster. It's just if people ever start valuing these guys top 5 for like dynasty and stuff like that, that's when it becomes a sell because it's like you're kind of valuing at his peak. And if he doesn't get there, then it's a missed opportunity. So that's why I've personally just been lower on it compared to the market because until he gets traded, then cool, I'll value him at that, but I don't want to value him in that air because like it feels like I'm kind of forcing myself into that personally.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I'm going to check out a couple of markets right now, real quick, just to see where he is.
Mhm.
Personally, I had him at wide receiver 17 just a couple of weeks ago. I don't think that changes, but like we're talking about, for me, that's more of a bet on talent
Yeah.
than it is really a bet on situation or production. I'm trying to look here at Keep Trade Cut, which is just one market for Dynasty, and it looks like they have him. I'm stalling because I can't find him. Wide receiver 15. Wide
Yeah.
receiver 15 behind Drake London and Roma Dunze,
Yep.
in front of Devonta Smith and Nico Collins. No, you know, um,
Give me Nico.
interesting. Interesting there. I'm not sure how to feel about that, but it does feel kind of appropriately valued to me. Again, keep trade
Yeah.
cut, not the end all be all, but at least it's got 15 million data points to
Mhm.
kind of give us a sense of how the market feels about it. So yeah, I'm a little lower on Ayuk than that, but I still feel like wide receiver 17 might be a little too low because, like you said, the floor is there, but we cannot continue to rely. Ayuk cannot continue to rely on this hyper efficiency for his entire career. It just won't work out that well. We'll get a situation where at some point, the efficiency doesn't come through and he just absolutely disappoints. But if I'm looking at names on this list over Ayuk, I'd prefer a DK Metcalf. I prefer Michael Pittman. I prefer a Nico Collins only because I know those guys, like you're talking about, are going to get the target volume. So yeah, wide receiver 15, a little too rich for me.
Yeah, I don't mind him in that range. Just kind of just pick your poison. Like if we're talking like the Roma Dunzes or the Nico Collins, like I know Nico Collins is really good. We saw it last year, and he's attached to a quarterback in that situation, and we expect to get better. So I'll take the shot there. And Roma Dunze is just an incredible prospect who has the potential to be the wide receiver 1 in Chicago. attached to like Caleb Williams, like I'll take the upside shot there. But when we get into Devonta Smith, these wide receiver twos, Zay Flowers, DK Metcalf, I'm a little bit lower on. I'll take them in that range. But I think it's kind of fair. I have him at wide receiver 17, one spot below Jalen Waddle. But like if we flip the two of them and like we put him in Miami and Jalen Waddle in San Francisco, I would much prefer Brandon Aiyuk because I think Brandon Aiyuk's more of a complete wide receiver. It's just it kind of sucks because like we love the player, like we think everything's great, but the situation it's literally. I know we say like the it's not too crowded or too many mouths to feed, but this is the one situation in the NFL. It's like, it's legit too many mouths to feed. Like there's just, they don't pass enough. They play too slow. So it's really hard, especially when you feature Christian McCaffrey like they do. It really limits everybody else. And like the nice thing for George Kittle is just not that many good tight ends. Like if there was a lot of good tight ends, this would hurt George Kittle too. Like Kittle's doing the same thing Ayuk's doing. He's being super efficient. Like it's both of these kind of just like, we're just like pulling our hair out, even though I don't have any hair, but we're pulling our hair out being like, like let these guys eat. And it's just kind of how it goes. It's unfortunate. So it's one of those things, man.
So we'll see. Let's wrap this up. And personally, I don't think Aiyuk is going anywhere. I think he's just kind of grasping at straws, trying to do whatever he can do to find some leverage in the situation where he has none. I think that's a little bit differently than I was thinking about it 30 minutes ago. When we were talking to Aaron, who's in his Scott Fishbowl draft, who is drafting Ricky Pearsall. I still think that's a good value because he was in like round 17, 15, 16, 17. And there you're taking shots anyway. If Aiyuk gets traded, Ricky Pearsall could absolutely put up, 75% Aiyuk numbers. And that's looking pretty decent that late. But I don't think Aiyuk's going anywhere. What are you thinking? You think he gets dealt somewhere, or you think he's probably staying put in San Francisco?
I think he probably stays this year. We'll see what happens. I mean, as much as I want him to go somewhere. Like I want to like see that ceiling come to fruition.
Yeah.
But I just personally, I don't think he's going to go anywhere. As unfortunate as that sounds, like it's just like sometimes you're just going to enjoy the situation in San Francisco. Like that floor is really high. It's going to be fun. He's going to make a lot of good plays and do his thing. It's just we're not going to see him be the wide receiver one in the NFL. Like that's just not happening. But that's okay. It's not for everybody, unfortunately.
We are the Fantasy Football Universe. We are at fantasyfootballuniverse.com. We are on Twitter. We are on Instagram. We are on TikTok. We are in the Reddit streets. We are everywhere that you want to be. Apple Pods, just check us out. We're posting daily content. So for this guy, I am this guy. We are these guys. Join us next time for us talking about other guys who, are after all just guys. See you guys later.